Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the third week of PREPTOBER. I can't believe this. Welcome if you're new to our channel. Welcome back if you've seen our faces before. Today, I am joined by Emily Vanderbent, our social media manager, and of course, Riley Bohr. You might have seen around hosting coffee chats, participating in live streams, and such, but she has been promoted to a series regular recently. Riley is actually one of the literary specialists reading the beautiful manuscripts NaNoWriMo participants are sending us. And as I have mentioned in previous live streams, you might have heard we are official sponsors for NaNoWriMo this fall. Meaning that we are here to support fiction authors by giving them a community and tools necessary to publish. And Riley, you are in the trenches, no pun involving your book intended. How does the battlefield look to you? You seeing some major talent among the manuscripts that I know folks have sent us so far?
I have. There's lots of genres already that we're seeing, which is super fun because I get to read a lot of very different genres, which is super fun. We've got some awesome talent already, which is really encouraging and fun to see.
Beautiful. Well, that's so good to hear. I mean, you heard it, folks. Riley is a forgiving 5-star general. If you want to give your books a chance, the submission form is in the chat. We would love to read your book. So, plan of action on the docket today. We will do a 15-minute writing sprint because it's Preptober. It is time to be done with procrastination and get some work done. But before that, drum roll, please. The reason why we have gathered here today, editor-in-chief of Synchronized Chaos, writer, literally publicist, and dare I say, a friend of mine, Cristina Deptula, everybody. Hello.
Hello, hello. Wonderful to see everybody.
Hey, girl, looking good. How is the weather treating you? We are freezing over here on the East Coast, and the heaters are not yet on.
Oh, well, California is nice and sunny, but it's going to start getting cold very quickly. Because I live in Davis, out by the Central Valley, where we have more temperature extremes.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so not all California is created equal, is what you're saying.
No, some parts have more extreme weather than others, including where I am.
Right. Well, it is good to see you. And
besides, the weather can be a literary inspiration.
Oh, that's true. That's true. And actually, not just in our author's writing, but even in my colleagues' writing, I've seen a lot of descriptions of how the weather is outside. It kind of creates the mood, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
Yeah, it certainly does. I love that. Well, as I've said, it is really good to see you, Cristina. Thank you for joining us. And see, this is why I have such a love-hate relationship with social media and digital age in general. I agree with folks whose stance is internet and social media are sucking our souls dry. But then, if it weren't for the modern-day miracle of connecting online, I would have never met this amazing woman. She published my weird Vonnegut-esque essays about how I hate romance, but write romance for some reason. She did a killer promotion for my debut novel in her literary journal, connected me with the associations of writers and writing programs. And here she's again, donating her time to give us the gory details of publishing that writers don't really want to hear, because it's just so painful. It's just too painful to hear it. So, Cristina, today's topic is basically how to write a book in 10 steps or less. And because we here at Manuscripts believe that while writing a book is a mentally, physically arduous process, it doesn't have to be necessarily so complicated. And so in your experience, working with writers, and you have a lot of it, what do you think trips people up the most about the process of producing a book?
Okay, what I see that trips people up the most is that people don't do enough planning before they start. And then people start writing and they get 2 or 3 pages in and then they run out of ideas and they think, oh, I can't write a book. I don't have enough material. I'm not smart enough. I don't have enough ideas. And it's kind of like, if you were pregnant, but then you didn't want to wait the 9 months, you wanted to have a baby right away and snap your fingers. So there's
Oh,
a lot of preparation behind the scenes that has to go on. And I know everybody has a little different writing process. You might have heard of plotters who plan everything out beforehand and
yeah.
pantsers who just sit down and write by the seat of their pants. And if
Yeah.
you're a pantser, I'm not telling you not to be that. I'm
Mhm.
just telling you to find enough of a process that works so that you'll actually sit down and write something. I mean,
Mhm.
even if you end up writing a shorter book just to write something. So I would say that there's a lot of planning that you need to do, enough to where you feel that there is a story there that you could sit down and that you could write something. I just think a lot of people start before they're ready. And to be really ready, I would say that you need to have as I like to have a synopsis of the story to be able to describe the plot threads, the character growth and change,
Mm.
and the different settings, just to be able to have something you would send to a literary agent. You can look up online to read about synopses, something that tells your entire plot in three or four paragraphs and names and identifies all the characters. I would like to advise authors to be able to have that ready before they start writing, so that you know where the next step is in case you start getting writer's block.
Right. Would you say that it's a really interesting take? And I think I would mostly agree with you. The thing that I'm curious about is, do you think that the lack of planning in some cases is directly connected to maybe a loss of motivation down the road?
I think so. I think that it depends, because I do that. I find that when I am really not so interested in a story anymore, that's because I don't really agree with what is being said or being argued, or I think that I have grown beyond what the book is about, or there's just something in there that wasn't, or something is confusing. I get frustrated when things are confused. And
Hmm.
so I find that the best way to work around the snag is to go back to the plan. Or if it's that I've changed my mind about something that I'm kind of arguing for in the story, then it's
Hmm.
to go back and adjust the plan so that I don't feel that I am totally lost in a drift, or that I am, arguing through story or explaining through story something I don't really agree with anymore.
Right. So do you then repurpose those stories, or do you just throw them away?
It depends. If some of
Mhm.
them I have repurposed and I have saved, you don't have to throw anything away in the age of computers.
Yeah.
And so I kind of err on the side of saving the data, and then, just keeping it so that you're able to look at it and just not having to worry about that decision.
Right.
Just, saving it on the computer and then moving on as if it is gone, but just knowing that it's there should you need it.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's definitely not 1974.
Mhm.
When I remember reading about an anecdote about Stephen King and how he used to basically write by hand and then throw the drafts away, and his wife had to collect it and sort of, so he wouldn't lose the work because he wasn't satisfied with it. But at the time, during his writing process, he was so frustrated with himself that he would just throw away like pages and pages of book that he was writing, and his wife was like, "No, it's not. We need this." It's just like, we need this.
Oh, yes. And again, it's a balance. I mean, I am more of a go out and get it kind of person. I'm not a huge planner. Like
Mhm.
for trips, I'm leaving on a trip and I have one bag and my laptop. And my mom would be horrified. She'd be like, "Where's your suitcase? Where's this? Where's
Relatable.
that?" And
Relatable.
so she's just, she is a planner, and that's who she is. And that is what helps her to address her anxiety. But for me, it's the process of planning that is overwhelming and that is causing the anxiety. And
Yeah.
so it helps me, though, to kind of to tell myself to do, I am not getting myself out of my comfort zone to do more planning.
Mm,
And so that makes it so that when I'm actually writing, I can get up and go when I'm not distracted by planning when I'm writing.
yeah, absolutely.
So it's just,
Wonderful.
everybody is different. Know yourself and figure out what stops you. If it's that, some people love planning and they do too much planning and they never get to sit down and write, like they're doing research, or they're coming up with their pen names, or they're rearranging their desk, and you got to tell yourself to stop that if that's what you do. But then if you're like me, I'm going to sit down and write and then I wonder why I'm burning out of steam, it's probably because I don't know where I'm going because I didn't plan. So I have to remind myself to plan.
I love the no nonsense approach that you have to this, and I absolutely agree with you. For some people, doing something different, even if it's such a seemingly small switch from being a pantser to being a planner, is like getting out of the comfort zone.
Hmm.
Yeah, girls, any follow-up questions about this before we move on?
I'm curious because you're wanting like pantsers to sit down and plan, which I'm very much an advocate for because I'm a planner. But when you have an initial idea for a story or something, do you find yourself going to like one part of the process? Like you go to Spotify or you go to Pinterest or you sit down and start writing questions. Like, do you find yourself, no matter what the story idea is, going to this like first initial step every time, or does it kind of vary for you?
Oh, okay. Well, I usually have what hits me the most. A lot of people say, oh, well, a character hits, you suddenly have an idea for a character, or you suddenly have a setting. And so what hits me is a concept. I might be writing a coming of age story set in, Antarctica or whatever. And I might think, oh, what would a coming of age story look like within a research station in Antarctica? That's completely different. That could be a book. And then I'd be like, okay, if I'm actually going to write this, I need characters, I need a plot, I need conflict, I need a story structure, I need some descriptions, I need to do some research about what the research station would actually look like at different times of the year. So it's kind of like I have to move forward from that. But again, everybody is different, and I'm not here to tell pantsers to stop pantsing if it's working for them. I'm just telling everybody to identify their own individual hangups and do whatever they need to do to move past that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was a great question, Emily. And about descriptions, I think Jane Austen would disagree with you. You will not find one actually about Pemberley, right? Riley, is that right? There's one description of Pemberley in Pride and Prejudice, but that's about it. No, I'm kidding, of course. And we have a very interesting question actually in the chat from Kyra for you, Christina. So, in drafting a book, is it better to press into what makes a book unique or how it relates to stories target audiences already love? I feel like either approach requires planning, right? So she's basically asking, do we pander? Do we pander to trends, or do we just go with our heart? That's a really good question. Thank you for that, Kyra.
Oh, okay. Well, in terms of your first draft, the biggest hurdle for any author is just to write that first draft and get an entire book finished and to show that they can actually do it. And so I would say, if you want to write think about what is most exciting to you. If what makes your book unique is most exciting to you, then focus on that in that first draft. And if you're excited that you're doing a takeoff related to another story or a trope, then, press into that. And by the way, I don't think that tropes are the easy way out or tropes are silly or anything like that. I mean, if you are not doing anything unique, if you are rewriting someone else's, if you're literally copying somebody else, it can be, but just because you have a trope doesn't mean it's lazy writing. One of the authors I represent at Authors Large and Small is this guy, Marcus James. And so what he does is he goes over and looks at stories, whether it's, vampires who fall in love or coming of age or Romeo and Juliet kind of stories or underdog overcomes. And then he writes about them within modern day queer and, gay male communities. And so his thing is that I'm like, oh, you realize this is a trope. And then he's like, yes, I am claiming that trope. I am claiming that gay guys can also be heroes of the story. They can fight, they can save the day. Yes, and I mean, people do want the stories, but his point isn't what people want. His point is claiming his role within an existing pantheon. He's saying all of these stories can be ours as well. I will write a character who's one of us and have that character playing this role. So these stories belong to us as well as, to more traditionally macho people or beautiful princesses or whatever, saying these stories are ours. So tropes are not necessarily bad or the easy way out, but I would say in terms of your writing, it depends on your market. It depends on the story. I don't know. It just I get that question a lot. And again, it kind of depends. And you kind of have to think about, if you're following your own artistic vision totally, it could end up that you need it, to work with a small press that really sees and pursues your vision, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Not every book is for everyone.
Yeah.
I may not, not every book in the world is necessarily going to be something I want to read, but that doesn't mean that those books don't have a place in the world. It just means they're not aimed at me.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's very
I would
powerful.
say,
Mhm.
yeah. So think about, and there's nothing wrong with writing a few mainstream books to be able to sell some books, to be able to get the reputation and name recognition you need, to be able to follow your vision, to be writing your grand vision in the background. It's the same thing as having a day job, but I don't see any shame in that either. A writer has got to eat.
That is so true. Yeah, absolutely.
We need that on a bumper sticker.
We really do need, and it's just it's so weird when writers say that they also have like other jobs. It's like, are you, I don't know, are you shaming people for having jobs now? It's bizarre to me. So yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Okay, let's move on. Riley, you have a question for Cristina.
I do. So if you had to describe the process of producing a beautiful book in like 10 steps or less, what would they be? What would those 10 steps look like?
Okay, so to clarify, you're speaking about the writing aspect, not the publishing and marketing?
Actually, all of it, like production of a beautiful book in general.
Okay, well, I'm not a publisher, I'm a publicist, in order to be able to clarify that. So I will be telling people to go to a publisher.
Okay.
And so to produce a beautiful book, again, everybody's process is different. If you have something that is working for you and you're writing books, go for it, keep it. Don't think you have to start doing it my way just because I said if you got something that's working for you. But what works for me is to start with a high concept, such as that coming of age in Antarctica. And then to start, to start developing characters, a couple of characters, just 2 or 3. Don't overwhelm a book with too many characters. I know that there are great Russian novels.
Yeah, we don't want a Game of Thrones. We don't need that. Yeah.
I mean, if it works for you, again, but when you're first starting, I find that harder. So start with a couple of characters and come up with a couple of personality traits for each one, and then how they are going to learn and grow throughout the story. Because I feel everybody, you need to have a physical arc of how the characters get from point A to point B, any genre, whether it's a romance and they're falling in love, or it's a self-discovery where somebody maybe gets out of a romance and finds themselves again, or it's an adventure where they, manage to cross the ice in the snowdrift. There's physical movement in the story, but I think for a meaningful story, you also need internal character growth or movement, which doesn't have to be earth-shattering. It could simply be realizing something, but that they need to go through the story and then change in some way or realize something in the end, or it will feel shallow. But then it can feel boring if nothing physical happens, if it's just simply somebody, staring off into the sky, having realization after realization. So I think it's a matter of balance. So I'd say get the high concept, get a couple of characters, and then get a physical setting, and then get some elements of story, something that is going to happen. Somebody who does something that physically happens, and it doesn't, and then come up with some type of story arc from beginning to middle to end, which, does not have to be the traditional, stage setting, rising action, climax, resolution. Can be. Nothing wrong with that, as there's nothing wrong with tropes. But then there are all kinds of different sorts of story structures, parallelism or spirals or repetition. There's a wonderful book by Jamie Allison called Meander, Spiral, Explode. So if you want to explore different story structures, I would say go with that, look at that. But then you do want to come up with some sort of story structure and then get the book going so that you have something to look back on if you feel stuck, where you think, okay, I'm going to get them from point A to point B. And then I would say write out a synopsis, tell the story, explain what is going on as if you were telling the story to a friend of yours. And then I would write that out, maybe 20 pages of an outline, and then go and break it up into scenes. And that's when you do your pretty writing. You do your dialogue, you do your wind and weather descriptions, you write about the characters' feelings, you talk about places they're going, things that are happening. You worry about point of view, you worry about consistency and continuity. How do they know he has a red hat on if they didn't see him yesterday, kind of stuff. You think about that sort of stuff. And I would say write the story scene by scene by scene to go, get all the way through it. And then set it aside a little bit and then go back and read through it yourself and edit. I would say edit for big picture things first and do stuff like plot holes and poorly developed characters before you get into grammar and spelling. So yeah, I would read through it. Yeah, I would make sure does the plot make sense? Have the characters learn things? Are the characters believable and not purely stereotypical? Is there anything in it that might be offensive, culturally, racially, otherwise?
Right.
Um,
I was gonna ask actually, like you're reading my mind. Like, how many rounds of revisions do you recommend? Like at minimum,
I would say about 2 or 3. Just basically read through it and see if it makes sense. Then read through for plot, read through for character, big picture things. In articles that I write, even in nonfiction, I find myself moving chapters and moving scenes around. And then you got to go back and redo all the continuity. If somebody can't, you can't describe something, your characters can't describe something they haven't yet seen. And you got to think about the timeline all over again. But you might find, a certain scene is more dramatic, and it would be better if you started right there to hook readers, for example.
Right.
So, yeah, think about, I would say get everything into place and all arranged first, and then go back and then do continuity, do, spelling and grammar, do, accuracy of descriptions, that kind of stuff first, and then set it aside and then have somebody else read it, whether that's a critique group, whether that's another author, just somebody. Pay a professional editor if at all possible. That definitely helps. Look into somebody who has good reviews, talk to other past clients of that person, make sure their rates are fair, that that they know what they're doing. You got to be careful there. Anybody can call themselves an editor, but if you find somebody who's got good references and that you can afford, I would say do that. I would say work with that person back and forth, scene by scene, as much as you can afford. And then, with that person's help, polish your scenes. And if you don't have money for an editor, work with a critique group. There are several free ones you can join. Every critique group has a little different focus. Some of them want to be editing as you are writing, and they're more, style, line by line editing focused. And other ones are more plot focused. Some of them you read aloud, which can be helpful as you find yourself editing out extraneous words as you read aloud. Other ones, they want you to submit the writing in advance. Find something that works for you and stick with it. Have them or an editor or at least a really good writer friend read your book all the way through, and then go back and edit it again. I'd say at least 3 or 4 or 5 edits. Then I would look into publishing. If at all possible, I advocate traditional publishing because you get so much more support from a traditional publisher as well as someone vouching for your credibility. I don't think that self-published books are lower quality just because they are self-published, but it's just that there's no way to tell if they are or they aren't. And there just aren't. I mean, there are, awards and recognitions and reviews, but as a publicist, it's uphill for me to try to get a self-published book reviewed. And a lot of bloggers, podcasters, venues will not work with self-published books because, again, there's no objective standard of quality. You might get a wonderful book, or you might get something where nobody has taken care of grammar and spelling. There's a huge gradation in self-published books, and you never know what you're getting into. And having an agent and a publisher, even a small press, does so much to vouch for the quality of the book, as well as provide you with a professional cover, as well as more editing. All of which, of course, takes more time. Books can take years to come out. So I would say be prepared for that. And that's why you want to find something you really believe in and you really love, because it's going to be a long haul. Like, think of it like getting a PhD or like raising kids. So go in, I would say write a query letter, go to Query Tracker, manuscript wish list, look for a lit agent, follow all their instructions, look online for how to write a query letter, do a query letter and a synopsis, keep pitching. Again, you might need to pitch 50 to 75 agents to land one. If you can't find an agent, go out and try submitting directly to small presses, again, with that synopsis. They might ask for a book proposal, which is a sample of your writing, plus the query, plus comparable titles. Think of some other books that are like your book and talk about what those books are about and how your book is different. So yeah, look for all the different components of a book proposal. Again, that's online. Send that out to small presses. So I would do everything possible for months and months and months to get a traditional publisher, ideally with an agent, but if not, directly with a small press. And small presses can be good if they are very interested in the kind of writing that you do. If you, for example, if you're Latina and you're looking for coming of age stories that describe the Latina experience in a certain neighborhood, then you might find a Latina small press, for example, and then they would understand.
They're genre focused, right? I understand what you're saying. And actually, Yes, go ahead.
Oh, no worries. So yeah, so go out, try to, get the publishing, by a traditional press if at all possible, and be prepared to help with marketing. Ask other authors to write blurbs, endorsements of the book, try to build an audience over social media.
Yeah,
Go out and
I was
find
gonna
bloggers
say
to
that
review.
that you're basically describing what Emily was gonna ask you, like about the process of marketing. So yeah, Emily, go ahead, ask your question.
Yeah, so I was wondering, in sort of your process of working with authors, what has been like the biggest mistake that you see authors make when it comes to marketing their book, connecting with other readers, and then growing their audience and sort of continuing that? Do you have any advice for how to overcome whatever the mistake is?
Oh, okay. The single greatest mistake I see with marketing is that people think that it is enough to put their own material out on their own platforms and to wait to be discovered. A lot of authors will go out and create lovely Facebook pages and come up with all kinds of intriguing content, pictures or news, pictures of where the book takes place, or news stories about other things that are happening there, or recipes from the country, and they'll have a presence for themselves on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, wherever. They'll create a lovely website, but then they wonder why nobody is finding them. And they're like, I am marketing, why is it not happening? And so you really there are so many books out there, especially after COVID, when everybody during quarantine wrote a book. Everybody who wanted to finally got a chance to write their book. So yes, you really need to go out and find your audience where they already gather and reach them how they already communicate, which
Right.
means going out and, reaching out to book bloggers, reaching out to top Amazon reviewers. There are ways you can do it. There's something called the Indie View list, where for like $10, you can buy email addresses of top reviewers on Amazon and reach out to them. Um, let's see, there might be nonprofit organizations where you could donate copies of your book and they would mention it on the website. There are, bookstores a lot of times will take books by local authors or have you in for a signing.
Oh
And
yeah,
then there are
that's what we recommend as well. Actually, like we like partnering with nonprofit to kind of kill one bird with two. What's the
Two
saying?
two birds with
Two
one
birds with
stone.
one
And then
stone.
you're
Thank
helping the
you.
nonprofit as well.
Yeah, you're helping a nonprofit. You're doing a social good, and yeah. So that's really powerful advice for sure. And we do
And of
have.
course, reaching out to influencers on social media. An influencer is simply somebody with more followers than you have who is in your genre, or is going to be somebody the people you think are going to read your book are going to be interested in that influencer. If you write young adult fiction, then go and find influencers who talk about young adult books, on YouTube, on Instagram, Bookstagram, Twitter, and email them or tweet to them or message them however they say they want to be contacted. Follow the guidelines and let them know about your book and see if you can reach their audience and try to get them to encourage people to come and find you.
Right, right. Yeah, that's really good advice. I mean, influencers are kind of like celebrities these days. So like, what is really the difference? They definitely give people exposure. And Kyra actually posted a really interesting question, and this will be the last. I promise, Christina, I will let you go then.
Oh,
So,
okay.
at one point, should authors consider getting help or guidance from a publicist? Everyone has different budgets, and it can be hard to tell when investing in publicity should be a priority. So, you are the person to answer this, I guess, Christina.
Okay, yes. I think that an ethical publicist, and certainly we would do this, will look at your book and will determine if publicity is something you need and that would benefit you, and not just try to sell you services that you aren't going to need, because that
Mhm.
ultimately doesn't benefit you and it doesn't benefit the publicist even, because then they have a book where they couldn't get much traction. And a lot of times the reason books fail is that people do publicity too soon, when what they really need is more editing. And so people will come with a book, and sometimes we can do stuff about it, and sometimes we can't. Sometimes the book is already published, and the small press or vanity press has come to us and said, "This is the book."
Mhm.
The author will have to pay another $5,000 if they want changes. And so
Mhm.
then we just do the best. Then we just do the best that we can. But then if an independent author comes to us and they have are in control of their book, then, we will honestly tell them, okay, you need to go and fix some plot holes. You've got typos. It's not going to sell in this format. You need to go and to fix it. So that is one thing. And then in terms of guidance from a publicist, I would say, the best author to work with a publicist is somebody who's kind of mid-level, who is selling some books and has some audience to build from, but then needs help growing that audience and then framing messages to send to that audience. Because as a publicist, I can go out and pitch, straight through lists of reviewers, through lists of blogs. I can look at someone's local bookstores, and I can start from nowhere, but it really helps, people will want to see the author involved with the book, unless, because people think, people will want to connect directly with the person who wrote the book. So if the author is already doing something towards publicity, then in addition to the publicist, then it goes a lot farther. People will want, the publicist is meant to help the author and work alongside the author as a teammate. So it helps if the author already has invested some time and energy into some connections, even if it's their local bookstore, their local library, maybe a couple fellow authors who have blogs, and then the publicist can quote from that in an email pitch and then build off of that.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's definitely such good advice. And I can see why people would need a human connection. It's just, put a name to a face. It just works better for sure.
Yes, and there are people who are, not able to do that. We've had some people who are 85 years old and in poor health, and they don't, choose to go out anymore, and we will work with them and then explain that. But then for somebody at the beginning of their writing career, especially, it's really useful to be able to go out and to start building those connections yourself, and to have a publicist help you figure out where to go and be like a thought partner with you, as well as somebody who can assist with the matters of sending the emails and messaging people on social media and calling bookstores.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. And you explained something. You've explained everything so thoroughly. I don't think I have any other questions. Girls, any final questions for Cristina?
I don't think so.
No, all mine were answered.
You've been wonderful, Cristina. We've already kept you longer than we wanted you to, because we know you're busy. So thank you so much for coming on to the live stream. Please stay in the ecosystem. We would love to have you again and interact with you. And for everyone watching, Cristina's credentials, her website, our social media, all that fun stuff will be linked down below at the end of the live stream. So please do come again. You've been wonderful to work with.
Oh, thank you very much. And you are very welcome. I was very honored to be here. Good luck with your writing.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye, Cristina.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
All righty. Well, that was nice. How do we feel?
Oh, that was lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really insightful. Like when you have a professional in your circle who can help you with that kind of thing, who has experience, it just makes you more confident to proceed, right?
Yeah, you can just tell she's got so much knowledge. I was like, can I just talk for like 3 hours?
Can I pick your brain a little bit, please?
I wish we could. But YouTube will hate us for this. YouTube will hate. I would just keep talking forever, but unfortunately, YouTube would hate us for this. And we do have some work that needs to be done. So again, thank you so much, Cristina. If you're still on, you've been wonderful, and let's get some work done. So. Writing sprint, 15 minutes. What are you working on, Emily, today?
So I'm still on the third book in my young adult historical fantasy series. A lot of stuff is happening right now. So heads up, I probably can't read you what I'm gonna end up writing, because we're in a bunch of like action and spoilers right now. But that's kind of where we're at.
Okay, Riley, what you working on?
I'm working on the third book in my historical fiction series that I'm hoping to crank out and be done with by the end of NaNoWriMo, which seems like a very daunting task right now. But yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to read anything either, because the beginnings of this that I've already written spoils everything about the book I just published.
Oh, come on.
I know. I might be able to read you a little bit. I might be able to find a good section.
Something. You have to find
Yeah.
a section that doesn't
I'll
spoil
find
it.
at least a sentence. How about
Okay. Okay. Well, I am actually writing on an undisclosed project. It's a writing gig, and the ask was sci-fi / fantasy. It is not something that I am very comfortable with, so you will have to be kind because I don't know what's gonna happen. It can be anything, and it can suck. So, all right, let's do it. 15 minutes from now, 10 to 15 ish, depending, so that we would have time to read actually the excerpts. I mean, and yeah, let's go. God, I'm having a case of imposter syndrome right now. It's so bad.
We love that.
You can do it, Simona.
Thank you.
Is this like the first fantasy sci-fi
Yes,
you've
yes,
ever written?
yes,
You're doing
ever.
so great. I'm sure
Yes.
it's fantastic.
Yes, I'm shaking, you guys. I don't know why would anyone ever ask me to write this?
Because you're good.
You can do it.
Thank you.
If it helps, I started this at Emily's house maybe like a month ago, and I haven't touched it since because I'm scared of it. So
Oh my, and like to
Oh my
read it out loud for
Oh.
everyone to see. You know what I mean? Like,
oh.
one more minute to go, folks. Tell me about it.
That was so fast.
I know. Kyra's saying that she's struggling with her speculative piece right now. Rajan is irritating her like a typical man. We feel you. I mean, if Kyra is struggling with something that she is, I mean, it's her genre. She
That
writes
she's a pro at.
that she's a pro at. Then what am
Yeah.
I supposed to do? Why did I take this gig? I don't know. I like to suffer.
How am I gonna finish this by the end of November?
Oh, you're gonna do it.
Oh my gosh, this is stressing me out. It's only been 15 minutes.
Ems, were you a cheerleader in college or high school? Because you are really good at it.
Me?
Yes,
No, I was
not, were you?
not.
you
No.
are really good at uplifting spirits.
Oh, thank you.
Kyra's saying to embrace the pain.
Embrace the pain.
I will do. Thank you. All right. Pens up, hands up, as I always say. Who wants to go first?
Emily does.
Okay.
Oh, I'm not going first, Kyra. Go away. You go first. Drop your paragraphs that you're struggling with. Meanwhile, Emily will read hers. Go ahead, Em.
Okay. So for context, this is 2 chapters after what I read last time. And it's not exactly what I wrote, but it contains some of it, 'cause I had to backtrack.
Last time we thought the main characters were going to hook up in a library. Clearly, did not happen, to my big disappointment. So go ahead.
Okay. Smoke-colored clouds slid past the moon, masking and unmasking its glow on the scene below as Adelaide, Teo, and Colt set foot on the Biltmore estate. The crunch of snow and whisper of crystallized breath formed the melody to which they walked, joined only briefly by the toll of church bells in the distance.
Ooh.
She pulled them aside as the moon lit the snow at their feet, chasing them into the dark embrace of a gnarled pine. Needles twisted in her curls, and she tried not to gasp as the snow from a disturbed branch slid down her neck like the lick of ice-cold death.
Ooh.
She waited a breath before pressing on, slipping between the shadows until they stood in the one cast by the manor at the foot of the Biltmore. The rooms were dark, the curtains drawn, but as she looked up at the house, as she had once before, she felt the distinct graze of eyes watching them. Though she couldn't be sure in the dark of the night, she thought she saw a flicker of movement in a window on the top floor. Creepy, isn't it? Colt said, pulling his coat tighter to him. Just at night, Adelaide said, recalling how it had looked the other day with Lucille, both above and below the clouds. It's actually quite beautiful during the day. Come on. She led them past the snow-dusted garden and across the mezzanine to the door in the back that the butler had brought her to before. Adelaide blew out a breath and pulled a bobby pin from her hair. Here goes nothing. She fit it to the lock, pushing back the latches one by one and wishing this time for Colden and his lockpicking abilities. Teo cleared his throat. Getting inside before frostbite settles in would be preferable. Adelaide bit her lip in concentration as she jiggled the pin around. Give me a second. After a few more attempts, the final latch gave way and the door opened, revealing a dark stone passage. After you, Teo said. With a flick of her flashlight, Adelaide stepped over the threshold.
Ooh. And what happens next?
And then what?
I don't know.
And then what? Oh, I love it. Like, your descriptions are wonderful. I'm always right there with whatever's happening with the characters. You know what I mean? Like, it's chills. Because you make it so vivid, you know, like you make it so vivid. Like, you could be literally writing about how a paint dries on the wall, and it would be interesting because that, you know, you can describe every molecule and every fiber of that paint. That's what I love about it. So, oh yeah, wonderful.
Thanks.
Absolutely. All right, let's read what Kyra is doing, and we'll take turns. So
I've been reading it. It's lovely.
Okay, let's do this. So, is that what you want from us? Ooh. Ooh. He grins, his teeth shining and too straight. You think highly of yourself, fleshed one. Your female assumed the same, and even the dullest of creatures knows what assuming does. I am not his female, I resumed. I belong to no one, you twisted. Silence, the sword-wielding captive spews, or my blade will cut off the next word in your throat. Oh my god.
Whoa.
Riley.
Iris tenses up and reluctantly obeys, eyeing the sword tip already stained by her blood. The captor begins again. As I was saying, you and this loquacious female flesh one think too highly of yourselves. We would never debase our holiness with... How do you even pronounce that?
Corporeal.
Okay. I'm an English major, guys. I promise. I know.
This is an Ivy Leaguer writing.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah. I'm sorry.
I mean, we are not.
I went to public school. We don't know those words.
Yeah.
You are beneath us and condemned to rot. We are eternal. We will be whole in fullness. Listen, I demand seething. All right, Emily, your turn.
Yeah, Emily.
I don't know who you are, but you all are the ones that think too highly of themselves. And until you say what you want with us, you're nothing but cowards. He laughs, each inhale screeching like a rusty door hinge. He drops his sword to fall to his feet and crosses his arms. Poor fleshed one, you humor me. Our purposes are of no concern to you, but you are of concern to us. You and more of your kind are going to help us sow the seeds of power so that we will reap the harvest in the rain of fullness.
Oh dear. It sounds.
What is happening?
What is happening? But it doesn't even sound like speculative fiction to me.
It sounds Game of Thronesy.
It sounds Game of Thrones, right?
That's what
I
it
was like,
sounds like
Jesus.
interrogation, like there's like this person like kneeling in front of like a throne or something. And
Yeah.
yeah, it sounds very
Right?
like, interrogation-y.
I mean, oh my God, Kyra ventured into medieval fiction or
Oh.
something. But I love
wouldn't
it.
doubt
No,
it.
I mean, chills. I mean, I absolutely love this. But yeah, Kyra, you're too smart for us, unfortunately. Like we went to public school, so not gonna no. But we love it, of course. All right, let me go then. Let me go next.
Oh, I have to go last. Okay, you
Oh,
can
jeez.
go.
Okay.
I'll finish up.
Oh my God.
I have to decide which part I'm reading. So yeah, you go.
Okay. Nobody could hear my brother scream in the vacuum of space, except for me. I heard trillion living organisms die in an instant with him, silence when two of the oldest galaxies collided in an inevitable duel for dominance. Only the strongest survived, a short-sighted, outdated law by which the universe should never have followed. The universe was as cruel as it was inhospitable. Galaxies merged, they lived in symbiosis, or they absorbed one another, consuming and expanding, digesting and creating. That was the philosophy we lived by on Tripolis. For every life taking, there wasn't another life restored. Every 10 years, the atmosphere of Tripolis and all its 5 moons would become inhospitable. A great storm would descend upon the outer layers and transform them into a mixture of poisonous gases, hydrogen, helium, methane. These storms would last several months, never longer than 1 year. All living beings crawled underneath to survive. Once the ice melted and the storm passed, allowing our star Lilia to warm it, all sensibles emerged onto a planet sprinkled with diamonds in the rough. And the race would begin to restore the planet, bigger, better, richer. A flood of merchants, miners, and ambassadors from other worlds came to trade, to collect, to get their fair share from the central planet, keeping the system afloat. They were so sure they'd be blessed with fields of diamonds to feed them for 10 more years, only to lose it all again. Wait and live like bugs in a cycle of destruction just to catch a glimpse of jewels they were willing to kill for. Meanwhile, it was the jewel itself that was killing them. I was the one who anchored them all. I was the chaperone of every being born, every being dying on Tripolis. I, a being in perfect symbiosis with life and death alike, was forced to accept that there was no higher power than free will. We all were. My family and I were forced to look after a ruck of sensibles, willingly stuck on Tripolis and its abusive loop of doom and restoration, when far more amicable galaxies awaited me. They called me, and I couldn't leave.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm at imposter syndrome, guys.
This
Reads
is my
us
first
like
time
this
writing
stunning
sci-fi
thing.
and politicism.
Okay.
What? You got cut out. I didn't hear you guys. What did you say?
I just said sure, says she has imposter syndrome, and then reads us this like beautifully perfect thing. Cool.
Yeah. You
Okay.
can tell, or at least I can tell, that you like just wrote that article on Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's very.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
feels very it feels kind of like Firefly.
Yeah.
Like
Very
not completely, but like the vibes, the aesthetic. I'm getting
Yeah.
Firefly.
Listen, I get inspired wherever I can. Like, I'm not gonna lie. It is
Am I
what it
showing
is.
my nerdiness? Who actually knows? If anyone that's watching actually knows the show Firefly, come talk to me.
Yeah, I do know Firefly but it was a book first. It wasn't a show, right? Or
Right,
am I
right.
mistaking it with something?
I don't know the book. If it is I wouldn't doubt it that it was a book, but I don't know the book.
I'll talk to you after.
You talk to me after. I love to see it.
Anyway, Kyra is saying that it's the world building for me, and I'm intrigued by the potential perspective of the narrative. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, it is the first piece that I wrote in the first point of view. Like I usually write either like a third person point of view or like an omniscient narrator. So yeah.
There we go.
All right, Riley. your turn.
Okay, so I'm gonna give a little bit of background that this won't spoil anything. So what I'm gonna be reading is a letter. Reading embarrassing first drafts. Love that. It's a letter that one of my characters is remembering. It's the last letter that her fiance wrote her before he died
Oh no.
in the war.
No.
So it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt because it's so sweet, and then you realize she didn't get another one. Okay. Okay. I cannot be sure what tomorrow holds. The psalm is unlike anything I've ever seen and anything I ever hope to see again. Men die beside me nearly every hour. Sometimes they fall right on top of me. Each time my head rises above the trench, I wonder if it's the last sky I'll ever see. Each day I look up, I try to remember every brushstroke of color and every single cloud, and nearly every time I wonder if my sky is your sky. I don't want to lie to you about anything I've seen here. It's truly the worst thing I've ever seen. There's never been anything like it. It's truly the war to end all wars. So many from home are gone, I've lost count. I hope every day that someone far higher in rank than I can end this for all of us. Tell me about the hospital. If it's anything like this, I'm so sorry. I wish so much more for you. But I love you all the more for what you're doing. I wasn't sure it was possible, but I do. Every single day I do. You're invaluable to me, to the men you serve, to the other nurses, to so many. Truly, the men would be so lost without people like you who are willing to serve. You, the others, you make broken men whole again, at least as whole as we can be after what we've seen and what we've done. Some say the war will end soon. Others say the world will end before the war does. I'm not sure which is true, but I know the dreams of our future make me believe in a new time of light that will follow this nightmare. I can't wait to marry you. I'll hold you every single day of the rest of forever, and it still won't be enough for me. I'll make it worth every second of absence as soon as I can. All my love forever, Caleb.
Oh my god. Kyra is losing it, by the way.
I'm crying in the car.
Kyra is losing it.
It's a rough one. Yeah.
It is very real. It's like no BS, you know what I mean? Like you can tell that you know your stuff.
Thanks.
That it's not
Let me just shatter hearts in the prologue. It'll be fine.
Ugh. It hurts, like even knowing the context.
Yeah.
Yeah, you left us speechless, sort of. Anyway, well, I don't know what to say, honestly. I wish we could go forever, but as I said, YouTube would hate us. So deep breath after the not so embarrassing first drafts, actually. And what I'm going to say is thank you all for participating. Thank you to my wonderful colleagues. Thank you to Kyra, who sent her not so embarrassing first draft. Yeah. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you again, Christina, for the first part of the live stream, for giving us all that wonderful information. And we will see you next week, again on Tuesday, when we will be joined by one of the participants of NaNoWriMo this year. So again, the feels will be here. Everything will be here as usual. And yeah, bye-bye.